let's have a look at MIDI in Ableton. To access MIDI preferences, go to Live on Mac, File on Windows, and choose Preferences. Then you'll find the MIDI tab here. Here are all your MIDI ports. First, inputs, so from a keyboard, for example, into Live. And here are outputs, that will be from Ableton Live and out to a keyboard or something else. And now I'll talk a little bit about these three columns here: track, sync, and remote. As you see, you can enable or disable each one of them. So, MIDI in Ableton. We have track in, as you saw. We have sync in. We also have remote in. Three different ways that Ableton can interpret MIDI. And of course the same out. We have track out, sync out, and remote out. So the track section, the first one, it's used to play instruments. Let me show you how that works. So I've connected MIDI keyboard, and I want to play an instrument with these keys with the keyboard. So I found my instrument. It's called MPK Mini, and to play an instrument I have to enable track on input, track, because I want it to receive information so that it can play an instrument. And then in Ableton you see that it will appear here, MPK Mini. If I disable it, there, it has disappeared, so you can't play an instrument with it. So if I just add an instrument there, enable track on input, then I can choose the MPK Mini and play. I don't know if you heard that sound, but yeah. So that's track. Turn it off and it won't work. And then we have sync. I can't demonstrate it now because I don't have something to sync it with. But for example, if you want two computers to be in sync, so that you start, when I start Ableton on my machine, the other machine starts playing in the same tempo. We can use this sync in or out. Or we can also synchronize, for example, guitar pedals that accept the sync message that Ableton sends in to, for example, have a delay follow the time of your song or something like that. That's sync, and you enable and disable it the same way in MIDI. And for example, if I want to sync from a network here, I can enable in, and then I'm the slave if I receive sync. If I want to be the master, I enable on the output, because then I want to send the sync. And as you can see, when I enable, when I accept to be a slave, and I enable to, or I accept to receive sync messages, a new button appears up left here called Ext, and I can turn it on or off. If it's on, I'm allowing someone to control my Ableton set. If I suddenly decide, no, I don't want to be controlled anymore, I can just turn it off and choose to work independently. So that's sync. The last one, called remote, is to control parameters in Ableton, like with mapping, as I explained in the previous video with the controllers. So I can control faders or buttons with these other knobs here. So it's to control parameters. I'll show you how that's done. So on my keyboard I can choose to turn on remote on input, and then if I go into MIDI mapping, I can press a fader there and touch the fader on the MIDI keyboard, go out of mapping mode, and it will be mapped to that fader. If I disable remote on the input, it won't work. You can also use both at the same time, of course. So I can play an instrument and turn the volume up and down. Then I've kind of made my own synthesizer here. But also when I have remote enabled, I can also map the keys of the keyboard to things in Ableton. So if I want this key to enable recording, I can just play as normal, and then if I start recording, it will record. Of course I can't use that key because that will stop the recording, but yeah, that's how MIDI, that's basically how MIDI works in Ableton